Emma had always believed that love would protect her marriage from everything. When she married Daniel, she was certain their life together would always feel warm and exciting. Daniel was the kind of man people trusted easily. He spoke softly, worked hard, and cared deeply about the people he loved. When he looked at Emma, it was with a quiet admiration that made her feel special in the beginning. Their marriage felt simple and beautiful. They lived in a small apartment near the center of the city. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home. On their first night there, they ate takeout on the floor because their furniture hadn't arrived yet. They laughed about it for hours. Daniel promised her that one day they would look back on those moments and smile. And they did in those early months. They were inseparable. They watched movies late into the night, cooked dinner together, and talked about their future. Emma dreamed of traveling someday, maybe seeing Paris or Rome. Daniel listened carefully every time she talked about it. He told her they would go someday when life became more stable. Emma loved the way Daniel believed in her dreams. When she had doubts about her career or her choices, he always encouraged her. He never tried to control her or argue with her. He simply stood beside her for a long time. That felt perfect. But slowly, without either of them noticing at first, something in their relationship began to change. It started with small things. Daniel's job became more demanding. He worked at a logistics company where deadlines were tight and mistakes could cost the company money. Some weeks he had to stay late at the office. At first, Emma understood. She would wait for him and they would eat dinner together even if it was late. But as time passed, the waiting began to bother her. She would check the clock again and again, wondering why he wasn't home yet. Her imagination started creating reasons. Maybe work wasn't really the reason. Maybe he just didn't care enough to come home earlier. When Daniel finally arrived one evening, tired and carrying his laptop bag, Emma greeted him with frustration instead of warmth. "You're late again," she said. Her voice sharp. Daniel looked surprised but calm. "I'm sorry. There was a problem at work that took longer than expected." Emma crossed her arms. "There's always a problem at work." Daniel didn't argue. He simply nodded and said quietly, "I'll try to be earlier tomorrow." At the time, Emma believed she had every right to be upset. She thought Daniel needed to understand how she felt. But what she didn't notice was the way Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly when she spoke. To him that way, that night they ate dinner in silence. Moments like that slowly became more common if Daniel forgot to buy something from the grocery store. Emma pointed it out immediately. "You had one simple thing to do," she would say. "If he left his jacket on a chair instead of hanging it in the closet," she complained, "you never pay attention." Daniel rarely defended himself. He simply picked up the jacket or apologized and tried to fix whatever bothered her. At first he believed Emma was just stressed. Everyone had difficult days sometimes. He thought if he stayed patient, things would get better. Emma didn't see it that way in her mind. She felt like she was the only one trying to keep their life organized. She worked too, and her job had its own pressures. When she came home tired and saw small things out of place, it felt like proof that Daniel wasn't doing enough. The truth was more complicated. But Emma didn't stop to think about it. One evening, Daniel brought home her favorite dessert from a small bakery near his office. He remembered that she had mentioned it earlier. In the week, he placed the box on the kitchen table with a small smile. "I thought you might like this," he said. Emma glanced at it for a moment. "Did you remember to pay the electricity bill?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "I was going to do it online tonight." Emma sighed heavily. "Daniel, why do you always leave things for the last minute?" The excitement in Daniel's expression faded. He slowly moved the dessert box closer to her. "I'll do it right away," he said. The dessert stayed on the table untouched for almost an hour. That was how many of their evenings started to feel. Daniel continued, doing small, thoughtful things. He made coffee for Emma in the morning before she woke up. He sent her encouraging messages during difficult work days. He asked about her plans and listened carefully when she spoke. But Emma had slowly stopped noticing those things. Her attention focused mostly on what was missing. Over time, Daniel's quiet patience turned into silence. Instead of explaining himself, he simply listened when Emma complained. Instead of defending his choices, he apologized. Emma interpreted that silence as indifference. "You never say anything," she told him during one argument. "It's like you don't even care." Daniel looked at her for a long moment before replying. "I do care," he said softly. But Emma had already turned away. Their friends began noticing small changes to Dot when they went out for dinner with other couples. Daniel often sat quietly while Emma talked. She sometimes joked about his forgetfulness or his long work hours. Everyone laughed politely, but Daniel's smile looked forced. After one dinner, their friend Marcus walked beside Daniel while Emma and the others walked ahead. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Daniel nodded quickly. "Yeah, just tired." Marcus studied him carefully but didn't push further. Daniel wasn't the kind of person who complained about his personal life. He believed problems inside a marriage should stay private, back at home. The emotional distance between Emma and Daniel continued growing. Their conversations became shorter. Instead of sitting together in the evenings like they used to, Emma spent more time on her phone or watching shows alone. Daniel sometimes worked on his laptop or read quietly in the living room. They still shared the same space. But something important had faded. One rainy evening, Emma came home from work feeling frustrated after a difficult meeting. When she entered the apartment, she noticed dishes in the sink. Daniel was still at work. Her frustration immediately grew stronger. By the time Daniel arrived an hour later, Emma was waiting for him with visible irritation. "You couldn't even wash a few dishes before leaving this morning?" she asked. Daniel glanced at the sink. "I had an early meeting," he explained gently. "I plan to do them tonight." Emma shook her head. "You always have an excuse." Daniel slowly rolled up his sleeves and began washing the dishes without saying anything more. The sound of running water filled the kitchen. Emma stood there for a moment, expecting him to argue or defend Kay himself, but he didn't. That silence felt strangely uncomfortable. Yet, instead of questioning her own reaction, Emma convinced herself that Daniel simply didn't care enough to fight for their relationship. Days passed. Then weeks. The warmth that once filled their apartment had almost disappeared. Even their bedroom. Conversations had grown distant. They spoke about schedules, bills, or plans for the weekend, but rarely about feelings. Sometimes Daniel looked at Emma as if he wanted to say something important, but he never did. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in the living room after Emma went to bed early. The television was on, but he wasn't really watching it. He stared at the screen while lost. In his thoughts, he remembered the early days of their marriage, when Emma used to laugh easily and hold his hand during simple walks. Back then, every small moment felt meaningful. Now those memories felt far away. Daniel wondered quietly if he had done something wrong along the way. Had he worked too much? Had he failed to understand something Emma needed? He didn't have clear answers, but one thought kept returning to his mind. He still loved her, even after every argument and every cold evening. His feelings hadn't disappeared. That was why he kept trying. That was why he stayed patient. But even patience has limits, and slowly, Daniel began feeling a quiet exhaustion inside his heart. He didn't say it out loud, he didn't complain, but sometimes he wondered whether Emma still saw the man who loved her, or only the mistakes she believed he kept making upstairs. Emma lay in bed, scrolling through her phone, unaware of the thoughts filling Daniel's mind. In her perspective, she believed she was reacting normally to a husband who seemed distant and distracted. She didn't realize that her constant criticism had built a wall between them. A wall made not from one big mistake, but from hundreds of small moments. And Daniel, standing quietly on the other side of that wall, was beginning to feel something he had never felt before in their marriage. Loneliness. But the most important moment, the one that would force Emma to see the truth, was still only a few days away. Emma woke up unusually early that morning. The sun had barely touched the horizon, and the city outside was still wrapped in quiet fog. She had planned to start her day as usual, grab coffee, check her emails, get ready for work, but something felt different. A heavy feeling pressed on her chest, a mix of guilt, anxiety, and curiosity she couldn't explain. She didn't realize it yet, but today would mark a turning point in her life. She moved quietly through the apartment, careful not to wake Daniel. The kitchen was still dark except for the soft glow of the streetlights coming through the window. She poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, letting the warmth seep into her hands. She had spent the last few nights replaying Daniel's words in her mind. It's the ones she had overheard without meaning to. I'm trying my best. I just want her to be happy. But sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough. Those words had struck her like a hammer to the chest. She had never imagined Daniel feeling such deep sadness, never thought he carried so much weight silently. Every memory of their arguments, every criticism she had thrown at him, now appeared to her in a new, painful light. Emma remembered how she had ridiculed him for small mistakes, how she had pointed out his flaws in public, how she had rarely said thank you or expressed appreciation for all the little things he did. She realized that the man she thought was indifferent had only been quietly loving her through every storm she created. The thought made her stomach twist, and she pressed her hand against it as if she could somehow absorb the shame physically. She wasn't ready to face him yet, not fully. She sat there, sipping her coffee, trying to make sense of her emotions. Part of her wanted to run away, avoid the confrontation she knew was coming. Part of her wanted to confess everything immediately, throw all her words at him in a desperate plea for forgiveness. But fear held her back. Fear that he might not forgive her, that the damage was too deep, that he might have already given up on them. She had been so focused on her frustrations, so wrapped up in her own needs, that she had never really stopped to see Daniel as he truly was: patient, selfless, loving. The sound of the door opening downstairs made her heart leap. Daniel had left early for work in the past months, but today she noticed he was home. She wasn't sure why, but she didn't move. She stayed in the kitchen, pretending to be busy, letting the moments stretch longer. Then she heard his voice, soft and low, carrying through the apartment. She froze her coffee halfway to her lips. Daniel was speaking on the phone. She didn't intend to listen, but the words floated to her like a thread she couldn't ignore. I'm trying my best. I just want her to be happy. Daniel's voice trembled slightly, revealing a vulnerability Emma had never heard before. He continued, I still love her, but sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough. Emma's hands shook. The mug slipped slightly, and she caught it just in time. Her breath hitched, and her chest tightened. She had spent so long believing Daniel didn't care, believing he was indifferent to her complaints, but now she saw the truth. He cared more than she could have imagined. He had carried the weight of her criticism quietly, without anger, without resentment, just love. Her own actions replayed in her mind like a cruel mirror. Every harsh word, every impatience, every cold stare, Ed, all came rushing back. And she felt a deep pang of guilt. She couldn't move. She stayed frozen in the hallway, watching Daniel pace softly as he spoke. He sounded tired, worn down by his own efforts and by the silent suffering he carried. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not loud or dramatic, but small drops that traced paths down her cheeks. She had never seen him like this, so human, so fragile, so utterly devoted. She realized for the first time that she had been blind. She had judged his silence as weakness when it had been the strongest form of love she could imagine. That the morning passed in a haze. Emma stayed out of sight, letting Daniel finish his call. She heard him promise to do better, to keep trying, and she wondered how many more days, weeks, or months he had carried these feelings alone. She imagined him walking into the office every day, putting on a smile for colleagues, pretending everything was fine while his heart ached quietly at home. Her chest ached too, a different kind of pain, sharp and gnawing. The pain of knowing she had been part of that loneliness by the time Daniel hung up. Emma felt a strange mix of emotions, sorrow, regret, and an unexpected surge of love. She had spent so long feeling frustrated and disconnected. Yet now, witnessing his quiet devotion, she felt something shift inside her. She understood the depth of his feelings, the strength it took to stay patient, to love despite being criticized, to keep hoping despite feeling unappreciated. For the first time in months, she saw him fully, not as someone who failed her, but as someone who loved her relentlessly. Even when she couldn't return it properly, she thought back to the small things she had ignored. The mornings he made coffee, the messages he sent, the times he stayed up late helping her with work projects or listening to her worries. Those moments which she had once taken for granted now shone brightly in her mind. They painted a picture of a man who had chosen love every single day, even when she had made it difficult. And she realized she had been selfish, absorbed in her own frustrations. Too blind to see him as he was, Emma felt a wave of urgency, a need to act. She wanted to say something, to reach out, to let him know she understood now. But fear still lingered. She wasn't sure if she could make him see how deeply sorry she was, or if he would even believe her. She paced quietly in the kitchen, her mind racing, heart pounding. Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter as she tried to steady herself. Every second felt heavy with anticipation, the quiet apartment amplifying the sound of her own thoughts. Finally, she took a deep breath and decided she couldn't hide any longer. She walked slowly toward the living room, making sure her movements were calm and deliberate. Her footsteps were light, almost hesitant, as if she were walking on fragile glass. When she reached the doorway, she paused, seeing Daniel sitting on the couch, hands clasped, staring at nothing. He looked tired, worn, yet there was still a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That glimmer pierced her heart. Emma wanted to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. Words felt inadequate, too small to express the regret and realization swelling inside her. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't know how to start, didn't know if a simple apology could ever convey the weight of what she felt. And yet something inside her demanded honesty. She couldn't let another day pass without acknowledging the truth. She had been blind. She had been harsh. She had been wrong. Daniel finally looked at her, sensing her presence. His gaze was soft but alert, waiting for whatever she was about to say. Emma's heart raced faster. She had spent years building walls, but now she felt compelled to tear them down. She swallowed hard and whispered, almost to herself, "I'm sorry." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. Emma felt the words tremble on her lips, but she pressed on, letting them flow naturally this time. She spoke about the past months, about her frustrations, about how she had misunderstood his silence, about how she had failed to see his efforts. She confessed her guilt, her impatience, her neglect. And as she spoke, she saw something change in him. The tension in his shoulders softened. The sadness in his eyes didn't vanish completely, but it was no longer heavy and distant. They sat in silence after that. Neither spoke for a long time. Emma felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by a fragile hope. She realized that this moment, awkward and painful as it was, had opened a door she hadn't known existed. She had glimpsed the depth of Daniel's love, and in doing so, she had found a path to change herself. The morning light streamed through the windows, bathing the room in a warm glow. Emma's eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time in months she felt connection, understanding, and a quiet tenderness. She didn't know what the future held, didn't know if their relationship would return to its early magic immediately. But she knew something important. Love was still alive, waiting for them to nurture it. Emma sat down beside him, hand trembling slightly as it touched his. Daniel didn't pull away. He didn't speak, but his presence was reassuring. She felt a tear slide down her cheek, and this time it wasn't guilt alone. It was relief, gratitude, and hope. She realized that love wasn't about never making mistakes. It wasn't about perfect timing or flawless behavior. It was about persistence, patience, and the willingness to see each other fully. Even in the moments of weakness and misunderstanding, hours passed and they didn't need many words. Their silence was comfortable, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of each other's feelings. Emma felt a new determination to change, to be kinder, to appreciate Daniel's efforts, to rebuild what had been quietly damaged over time. She understood that love was a choice every single day, and that she was finally ready to make that choice consciously. By the time Daniel left for work that morning, Emma felt a sense of clarity she hadn't known for months. She knew that she had a long journey ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt capable of walking it. She had witnessed the depth of Daniel's devotion, and it had transformed her perspective. Emma woke up that morning with a strange mix of anxiety and determination. The night had been restless. She kept replaying Daniel's quiet words in her mind, the ones she had overheard days ago, echoing over and over. "I'm trying my best. I just want her to be happy. But sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough." Those words had shaken something deep inside her. She had spent so long criticizing him, taking him for granted, and assuming he didn't care. Now she realized how wrong she had been, and the weight of that realization pressed down on her chest like a heavy stone. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to act. Emma moved carefully through the apartment, making sure Daniel didn't see her pacing. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her coffee, the warmth doing little to calm the storm inside her. She thought about the years they had shared, about the man who had always been there for her, silently loving her even when she had been harsh. Every small memory that once seemed ordinary now shone brightly in her mind. The mornings he made coffee before she woke. The times he stayed up late helping her with work. The notes he left on her laptop just to make her smile. She felt a mix of regret and shame, realizing that she had ignored all of it, focusing only on the things she thought he had done wrong. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet, and it made her thoughts louder than ever. She watched Daniel from the corner of the kitchen as he sipped his coffee, lost in his own world. His expression was calm but guarded, a subtle tension in his shoulders that spoke of the exhaustion he carried. Emma realized that he had been carrying not only his work stress but also the weight of her anger, her constant criticism, and her distance. For so long he had tried to bridge the gap between them, silently hoping she would notice. And now, seeing him like this, Emma felt a surge of both love and sorrow. She stepped closer, her footsteps light, almost hesitant. Every step felt heavy with anticipation, yet she knew she had to do it. She couldn't continue pretending everything was normal, couldn't keep hiding behind excuses or distractions. Her heart pounded as she reached the edge of the living room where Daniel was seated. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice, trying to find the words that could carry the weight of her feelings. I need to tell you something," she said softly, almost whispering. Daniel looked up, his eyes meeting hers. There was a flicker of surprise in his expression, quickly replaced by caution, as if he were bracing himself for what was coming. Emma swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," she said again, this time with more strength. I've been unfair to you. I've said things I shouldn't have, criticized you when I should have been grateful, and I didn't see how much you were trying for us." Daniel's eyes softened slightly, and he remained quiet, listening. Emma felt the words trembling in her chest, unsure if they were enough, unsure if he would believe her. She continued, letting the confession pour out naturally. She spoke about the moments she had ignored, the nights she had spent upset over trivial things, the times she had blamed him for everything. She admitted her guilt and shame, her realization that she had been blind to his constant love and patience. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Daniel didn't respond immediately, but the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. Emma noticed it and felt a spark of hope. She reached out tentatively, placing her hand near his. Daniel didn't move away. He simply looked at her, his expression open, patient, and gentle. That small act of acceptance sent a wave of relief through her, and she felt tears rise to her eyes. They weren't tears of sadness this time. They were a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a fragile hope. Emma took a deep breath, realizing that this moment was more than just an apology. It was a chance to rebuild, to reconnect, to start over. She felt the urgency of it, knowing that if she didn't act now, she might lose the opportunity to heal what had been broken. Daniel finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I've always loved you," he said. "Even when things were hard, even when it felt like we were drifting apart, I never stopped." Gosh. Those words hit her heart like a lightning strike. She had always known he loved her, but hearing it now, after acknowledging her own mistakes, made the weight of her actions feel even heavier. She knelt down slightly, her hand brushing his arm. "I see it now," she said, her voice shaking. "I see how much you've loved me, how patient you've been, and I've been blind. I've taken it all for granted." Daniel's eyes glistened with emotion, but he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. That simple touch conveyed what words couldn't: forgiveness, understanding, and a willingness to try again. Emma felt her heart swell with emotion. The walls they had built over months of frustration and silence were beginning to crumble. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. They talked for hours that morning. Not about work, not about schedules, but about themselves. Emma shared her fears, her regrets, and her realizations. Daniel shared his own feelings, the exhaustion, the quiet sadness. The moments when he had felt invisible, but had still chosen love. They spoke with honesty, with openness, and for the first time in months truly listened to each other. It was not easy. The conversation had moments of tension, moments when old habits of criticism tried to creep back. But they held on to the newfound understanding. Emma realized that rebuilding their relationship wouldn't be instantaneous. Trust and warmth needed time, patience, and consistent effort. She understood that love was not just about feelings. It was about actions, small gestures, and acknowledgement. She committed herself to noticing the little things, to expressing gratitude, to being present and patient. She understood that Daniel had been doing all of that already, silently carrying the weight of her criticism. And now it was her turn to meet him halfway. The days that followed were a mix of effort and discovery. Emma made small changes first. She left little notes for Daniel, thanking him for simple things. She complimented him when he did something thoughtful. She stopped focusing solely on his mistakes and started seeing the love behind his actions. Daniel noticed the change, and his patience began to feel lighter, more rewarded. Their interactions slowly became warmer. A smile appeared more often. Laughter returned to their home, tentative at first, then more freely. One afternoon, Emma came home from work to find Daniel in the kitchen, preparing a small surprise snack for her. She watched him from the doorway, feeling a mixture of love, pride, and gratitude. She realized that these small, quiet acts of love were the foundation of their marriage, the glue that had held them together through months of distance and misunderstanding. She walked up to him and wrapped her arms around him, a hug that spoke of apology, hope, and renewed connection. Daniel hugged her back, holding her tightly, as if sealing the moment into their shared memory. As weeks passed, their communication improved. They began sharing their day with each other, speaking honestly about their feelings and not letting frustration build silently. Emma discovered that Daniel had always wanted to be appreciated, to be seen, and to feel that his efforts mattered. She learned that criticism without recognition had created the wall between them. By changing her perspective and acknowledging his love, she found the key to reconnecting. Evenings became their time again. They cooked together, laughed over shared mistakes in the kitchen, and talked about dreams, hopes, and fears. Emma noticed herself feeling lighter, more patient, more willing to listen. Daniel's quiet support continued, but now it was met with gratitude, acknowledgement, and love. Their bond, once strained, was slowly growing stronger than before. Emma realized that love isn't about never making mistakes. It isn't about perfect timing or flawless actions. It's about persistence, patience, understanding, and the courage to face your own faults. She understood that relationships require effort from both sides, that mistakes don't define love, and that forgiveness is a choice that can rebuild what seemed broken. One night, as they sat together on the couch, Emma rested her head on Daniel's shoulder and whispered, "I love you." Daniel kissed her forehead softly and replied, "I've always loved you." The simplicity of the moment, the quiet affirmation of commitment, filled Emma with a warmth she hadn't felt in months. She realized that love wasn't only about grand gestures. It was in the small, consistent acts of care, acknowledgement, and understanding. Over time, Emma's transformation became a natural part of their daily life. She laughed more freely with Daniel, complimented him genuinely, and expressed gratitude for the countless ways he showed his love. She also learned to notice the little things he did that she had once overlooked. The way he tidied up without being asked, how he remembered her favorite snacks, how he would pause in the middle of work to ask if she was okay. Every small act became a reminder of the depth of his love and patience. Daniel, in turn, responded to Emma's changes with warmth and renewed energy. He continued to show his love through quiet acts of devotion, but now he did so knowing that Emma saw and appreciated him. Their home became a space of understanding and mutual respect, where both could express feelings without fear of judgment or criticism.